Here's a number that's going to sound insane. 2 people, same age, same income, their entire career. One of them retires with $200,000. The other retires with over $1 million. Same paycheck. Same years worked. So what happened? It's not luck, and it's not some secret stock pick. It's one decision, made early, that most people never even think about. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly what that decision is. And more importantly, you'll know the one number that actually predicts whether you're going to be okay in retirement. Not your age. Not some chart. One number. Stick around, because most videos on this topic get this completely wrong. Welcome back to Gigi Invests. Every year, new retirement account data comes out. And every year, a wave of videos tells you the average and median balance for your age group, then leaves you to sit there wondering if you're behind. Today we're doing something different. We're going to look at that same 2026 data, but instead of just handing you a leaderboard to feel anxious about, we're going to break down what the numbers actually mean, why the gap between average and median should worry you more than your own balance does, and the exact framework you can use at any age, with any income, to know if you're actually on track. If you want more videos that cut through the noise on money and retirement, hit subscribe. It genuinely helps this channel grow. And I've got a lot more of this coming. Section 1. The gap that should actually worry you. Let's start with the number almost every finance video glosses over. In nearly every age bracket, the average 401k balance is 2 to 3 times higher than the median. For people in their 50s, the average balance sits north of $200,000. But the median, the number that represents the actual middle-of-the-pack person, is closer to $75,000. Here's why that matters. Average gets dragged upward by a small group of high earners who've been maxing out their accounts for decades. Median tells you what's really happening to the typical person. So when a video tells you the average person your age has this much saved, it's quietly comparing you to a mix of typical savers and a handful of outliers. And that's a rigged comparison. If you've ever watched one of these videos and felt like you were falling behind, this is probably why. You weren't behind. You were being compared to the wrong benchmark. And this actually gets more interesting, because the size of that gap tells you something specific about how retirement savings really work in this country. Something almost nobody talks about, but he talks. Section 2. Why the gap exists. The compounding divide. The honest answer is that retirement savings isn't really about income. It's about how early your money started compounding, and whether that process ever got interrupted. Someone who started contributing at 22 and never touched the money has decades of uninterrupted growth. Someone who started at 35, or who cashed out a 401k when they switched jobs in their 20s, which, by the way, over half of people in their 20s actually do, resets the clock. A $20,000 balance cashed out at 27 isn't just a $20,000 loss. Left alone until 65, that same money could have grown past $150,000, completely untouched, doing nothing but sitting in an index fund. That's the real driver of the average versus median gap. It's not that high earners are dramatically smarter with money. It's that a portion of savers get 35 uninterrupted years of compounding, and a portion of savers get their compounding reset 2 or 3 times along the way through cash outs, loans, or long gaps without contributing. Section 3. The number that actually matters, not your balance, your ratio. So if comparing your raw balance to an age chart is misleading, what should you actually track? Financial researchers use something far more useful than a dollar amount. Your savings multiple, meaning your total retirement savings divided by your current annual income. This works for anyone, regardless of when you started or how your career has moved. If you're earning $80,000 a year and you have $40,000 saved across your 401k, IRA, and old employer accounts combined, your multiple is 0.5. Widely cited retirement benchmarks suggest aiming for roughly 1 times your salary by 30, 3 times by 40, 6 times by 50, and around 10 times by the time you retire in your mid-60s. The advantage of this method is that it automatically adjusts for your actual income and combines every account you have. Old 401ks from previous jobs, your current one, IRAs, even a Roth. If you've got 3 old 401ks scattered across old employers because you never rolled them over, this is exactly why that ratio, not any single account balance, is what you should be tracking. But here's where it gets more useful, because your multiple only tells you where you stand today. What actually determines your outcome is something you can control starting this month. Section 4. The one lever that matters most: your savings rate, not your start date. This is the part that gets buried in every average balance video. 2 people can have wildly different starting balances and end up in almost the same place because the single biggest lever isn't your current balance. It's your savings rate held consistently over time. Someone contributing 10% of their income starting at 34 can catch up to, and sometimes overtake, someone who started at 24 but only ever contributed the bare minimum to get their employer match. The person who started late but increased their contribution rate every time they got a raise usually wins over a 20 or 30-year window. This is genuinely good news if you're someone who didn't hit your income stride until your late 30s or 40s. Your trajectory matters more than your starting line. A simple, realistic target. Aim for a combined savings rate, your contribution plus your employer's match, of around 15% of your income. If you're not there yet, you don't need to jump there overnight. Increasing your contribution by even 1 or 2% every year, ideally timed to your annual raise, so you never actually feel the difference in your take-home pay, gets most people to that target within 5 to 7 years without any dramatic lifestyle change. This is exactly the kind of small, boring decision that makes the biggest difference over time, which is why it's worth subscribing if this kind of breakdown is useful to you, since we go deep on stuff like this every week. Section 5. The mistake that quietly erases years of progress. Now, let's talk about the thing that resets people's progress the most, because it came up constantly in the data: cashing out a 401k when leaving a job. Roughly half of people in their 20s and over 40% of people in their 30s do this when they switch employers. It feels harmless in the moment. It's often just a few $1,000s, and there's an immediate need for cash. But that withdrawal usually comes with income tax, plus a 10% early withdrawal penalty. And more importantly, it erases every year that money would have spent compounding. A $15,000 cash out at 28 isn't a $15,000 mistake. By 65, left invested, that same amount could have quietly grown into 6 figures on its own. The fix is almost embarrassingly simple. When you leave a job, roll the old 401k into an IRA or your new employer's plan. It takes about 20 minutes and costs you nothing. If you've got old accounts sitting with former employers right now, this is worth doing this month, not eventually. Section 6. What happens at the top? The real top 10% benchmark. A lot of people watching these balance breakdowns don't actually want to know the average. They want to know what separates a good outcome from a great one. Based on retirement research and industry account data, savers in the top 10% for their age group are typically doing 3 things differently, and none of them are exotic. They started contributing within their first year or 2 of employment. They've never cashed out a 401k when switching jobs, and they increase their contribution rate on a schedule rather than waiting to feel ready. That's genuinely it. There's no secret fund or special account only wealthy people have access to. The entire gap comes down to consistency and not interrupting the compounding. And that actually leads into the part of this that nobody wants to hear. But that changes how you should think about your own number completely. Section 7. Your 401k is not your retirement plan. It's one piece of it. Here's the reframe that should replace the anxiety these balance charts create. Your 401k balance alone was never supposed to be the full picture. It doesn't include Social Security, which pays the average retiree around $2,000 a month. It doesn't include a paid-off home, a pension if you have one, an IRA, or a taxable brokerage account. The real question isn't, how does my 401k compare to the average for my age? It's, will my total retirement income, 401k withdrawals, Social Security, and any other savings cover my actual expenses? A commonly used guideline here is the 4% rule. Multiply your expected annual expenses in retirement by 25, and that's roughly the total portfolio size needed to sustainably withdraw from it for the rest of your life without running out. If your expenses are $50,000 a year, that's a $1.25 million target across all your accounts combined, not just your 401k. That's a very different and far more useful number than am I above or below the median for my age. Section 8. A realistic plan, whatever stage you're at. So here's how to actually use everything we just covered. First, calculate your real multiple. Total retirement savings across every account, divided by your income. Ignore the age bracket comparisons entirely. Second, if you have any old 401ks sitting with former employers, roll them over this month. Third, set your savings rate target at 15%, including employer match. And if you're not there, raise your contribution by 1 to 2% every year, ideally alongside a raise. Fourth, once a year, estimate your future retirement expenses and multiply by 25 to see your actual target. Not the generic salary multiple version, your real number based on how you actually plan to live. None of this requires a dramatic income jump or a lucky investment pick. It's the same lever, pulled consistently for a long time. The truth is, comparing your balance to a stranger's average was never going to tell you anything useful. Too many variables, too many different starting points, too much noise. What actually predicts your outcome is boring. Start early if you can. Don't interrupt the compounding by cashing out, and raise your contribution rate a little every year. That's the entire game. If this helped you look at your own numbers differently, subscribe to Gigi Invests. We break down exactly this kind of thing every week. No fluff, no hype, just what actually works. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.